Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Aisah, and today in this video I want to present my presentation for the introduction to linguistic research project with the title An Examination of Figurative Meaning and Pullman's short dark comedy film The Voice in Your Head. So let's start from the background study. As we know, language is a tool or medium that we use every day in our life as humans. Language is more than just basic communication. That is why a branch of linguistics that explains how people trying to understand the meaning of words or semantics made it more interesting. This study will investigate figurative language in a short film that represents how the character's intention, feelings, and cultural origins are expressed through their dialogue and facial act that each character keep in the short film. Therefore, semantics is a good way to think about how figurative language makes audio-visual objects like short movies more interesting and change their meaning. In addition, this research will examine figurative language that shows in the SXSW dark comedy short The Voice in Your Head from the perspective of Pullman's characterization as Dan strengthens semantics and figurative language. Dialogue in the short film is very subtle, showing how language can deliver humor, emotional complexity, and mental conflict across imaginative interpretations. This work enhanced the area of linguistics by emphasizing the need of semantic analysis and understanding figurative language within new or modern media contexts. There are two research questions in my research. So the first question is how many figurative language got found in the short film, and the second is how does the meaning of figurative language affect the character intention or emotion. With the description of research objects. So this research focuses on the short film The Voice in Your Head in 2020, directed by Graham Parks. So Pullman plays as Dan, a guy who can't stop hearing a voice in his head. The story is about his daily life and job, which is often interrupted by a voice in his head that always mocks his every act. The short film is kind of ridiculous and exposes how weak people are by mixing dark comedy with psychological topics. And I chose this short film as my research subject because it has a lot of examples of metaphorical language or figurative language that make the style and the story better. The inner voice is a person in the movie, and it stands for a concern and guilt that the main character has. The type of figurative language, including personification, hyperbole, and metaphor, illustrates the abstract struggle between emotion and comprehension. And another point is that the short film The Voice in Your Head can easily be found on a YouTube platform, and the duration of the short film is only 12 minutes. So from the words above, figurative language can influence the mood, character development, and depth of issues in modern short films. So after I told the description of the object of my research, I'm going to explain the research objectives and benefits. So the primary objective of this study is to identify and analyze the various forms of figurative language usage in Graham Park's short film, The Voice in Your Head. The first aim is to classify the various forms of figurative language such as metaphors, personification, irony, and hyperbole that was found in the film's dialogue and narrative. It also looks at how figurative language usage affects the movie's tone, characters, and message. Likewise, the second aim is to examine how metaphorical language or figurative language depicts the protagonist's inner agitation and internal conflict. It emphasizes the role of figurative language as a narrative device that enhances humor and emotional depth. Next, for the benefit is to provide both theoretical and practical sake for some researchers. This also enhances the area of linguistic study and stylistics by clarifying the use of figurative language in audiovisual media, especially in short films. The result also can assist students and researchers who want to learn about language not just from reading. Moreover, it also explains how movie speech can help you learn a language. So the research aims to bridge the domains of language and media by illustrating how figurative expression serves as both an artistic and communicative medium. So after I told the research objectives and benefits, I'm going to tell the theoretical framework part. So according to Liu et al. In 2022, people's interpretations of terms in certain situations are often shaped by norms in society and practical information that they all share. Meanwhile, Dobrovolsky and Pirainen in 2021 declared that figurative meaning surrounds an imagery component that bears speakers' psychologically invisible experience. And then, according to Forceville and Pelling in 2018, that showed in Cole-Floyd et al. In 2021, analyzed metaphor and wordless animation. And they explain the meaning that metaphor mainly manifests in cognitive and emotional processes, therefore increasing verbal representations. Meanwhile, Popa Wyatt in 2020 stated that hyperbole increases emotional contrast by making the difference between what people expect and what really happens bigger. According to Adith and Ahmed in 2022, personification is the act of giving human behavior or act everything that isn't human. So Stanford in 2003 said that personification makes feelings and mental figure better, while Karaf in 2009 said that it means giving human action to things that aren't human. So according to Logaldo in 2023, the short movie with the title Rat by Sarah Gordon in 2021 is a good example of how important metaphors can be to a story. In that movie, the rat is the main character, an important key to express the story, and as a symbol for human imperfection like fear and fragility. So metaphoric language that shows up in The Voice in Your Head by Graham Parks in 2020, within verbal as well as non-verbal signal that suggests inner conflict, mental stress, and the personified voice of insecurity is indicated by the sentence, "You're with me until I go to bed, and then you're there when I wake up." So after I told the theoretical framework, let's start with the analysis and discussion, the main focus in this research. So from the table that shows in the presentation slide, there are 4 types of figurative language that I chose between many of the figurative language. So from the table shows how the short film The Voice in Your Head uses a lot of figurative language to show how Dan feels and what he's going through. The figurative language that frequently shows is metaphor, among all the cases that found such in lines like "you are just some final ice creams" and "you used to smile but now you are stitched," which show how tired and dull the life of the main character. Furthermore, the usage of irony is also clear, such when the voice says "he hates you but he loves you," which shows the differentiation between the actual meaning and non-literal meaning that Dan felt. Then hyperbole usage is when the voice says things like "I used to do puzzles" and scream at the same time, which shows how strange Dan's in the thought is. The voice in Dan's head saying things like "you're with me until I go to bed" is an example of personification. Indeed, the short movie excellently delivers Dan's mental stress and complicated feelings through innovative language, as shown by the frequent use of metaphors and other figurative approaches. The study analyzed the representation of figurative language in the short film The Voice in Your Head using linguistic perception, particularly semantics, in audiovisual media like short film that explains languages used to express complex cognitive and emotional processes while at the same time sending a message. Figurative language can explain thoughts and that cannot be directly explained or are difficult to explain, which helps the audience understand the complexity of Dan's personality and inner conflicts more. The study focuses on the identification and analysis of various forms of figurative language, specifically personification, metaphor, irony, and hyperbole, to assess their impact on how these figures of speech affect Dan's character. The awareness portrays how symbolic language reflects Dan's mental health and his voice, setting up metaphor as the primarily figurative way of expression. The study found that the movie was challenging to analyze since it makes dark humor with sensitive or uncomfortable topics. Research specifies that figurative language and painful humor are usually called dark jokes, complements the character's development and the emotional depth and intricacy of the story, pushing audience to explore meanings past minimal humor. And lastly, this research then may increase understanding of how creative language can affect storytelling and character representation. So that's all for my presentation. Before I close this video, I will mention the reference that I used in the presentation slide. So that's all for my video. Thank you.